The Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation by Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. An unofficial reading by Emm Wilde. Book 2. Chapter 10. The Beguiling Boy. Part 3. Paperman Wei shook his sleeves and fluttered forth like a butterfly. Unexpectedly, the moment he charged out from behind the drapes, he saw someone standing in the shadowed corner of the secret chamber. Jingguan Yao gave an easy smile and soundlessly drew the soft sword hung at his waist. This was the famous Hensheng. Back when Jingguan Yao was undercover at Wen Rohan's side, he often hid this soft sword around his waist or his wrist for use in dire situations. Hensheng's blade was so soft and so flexible that one might almost believe the sword itself was equally quick to concede and yield, when in fact it was vicious, sharp, and unrelenting. Once Hensheng was wrapped around its prey, Jingguan Yao would release into it a current of strange spiritual power, and the soft sword, which seemed so much like gentle spring waters, would wring its prey to pieces. It had destroyed many famous swords in exactly this way, reducing them to nothing but piles of scrap metal. Hensheng was currently like a venomous snake with glimmering silver scales, chasing and biting at the paper effigy. If Wei Wuxian was even slightly careless, he would be caught between those fangs. Paperman Wei flapped his sleeves and agilely evaded the sword, dodging left and right. All the same, this wasn't his own body. He nearly caught a bite from Hensheng's tip, and if this went on much longer, he'd be pierced through for sure. Suddenly, he spotted a longsword lying quietly on one of the lattice shelves. It had clearly been neglected for many years, as layers of dust covered it and the surrounding shelf. Amazingly, it was his old sword, Sui Bian. Paperman Wei pounced onto the lattice shelf and stomped on the hilt of Sui Bian. Shing! It heeded his call, and the blade sprung from its sheath. Sui Bian shot forth and began tangling with Hensheng's eerie sword glare. Once the shock on Jingguan Yao's face subsided, he quickly smoothed out his expression. He nimbly twisted his wrist a few times, causing Hensheng to wrap itself around Sui Bian's snow-white blade like a tangling vine, then released it to let the two swords fight on their own. Meanwhile, he hurled the talisman in Wei Wuxian's direction. The talisman ignited into a blazing flame as it sailed through the air. Wei Wuxian felt the scorching heat blast towards him. While the two battling blades blinded the room with their flashing glares, he used this opportunity to fervently flap his paper sleeves and shoot out of the secret chamber. He was almost out of time. Wei Wuxian couldn't afford to take it slow and ensure he wasn't spotted. He flapped all the way back to the guest house, incidentally arriving just as Lan Wangji opened the door. He flapped hard one last time, pouncing right onto Lan Wangji's face, where he had clung tightly, seeming to shake, tremble, and shiver. Lan Wangji's eyes were covered by the paper effigy's expansive sleeves. He let him tremble there for a bit before he gently plucked him off. A brief moment later, Wei Wuxian successfully returned to his body. He immediately drew a deep breath, lifted his head and opened his eyes, then shot to his feet. However, his body hadn't adjusted quite yet. His head spun, and he swooned forward. Seeing this, Lan Wangji immediately caught him, but Wei Wuxian's head unexpectedly shot up at the same time, colliding with Lan Wangji's chin, and they both grunted. Wei Wuxian felt his head with one hand, while the other rubbed Lan Wangji's chin. "Oops, sorry. Are you okay, Lanzan?" After letting him rub a few more times, Lan Wangji gently moved his hand away and shook his head. Wei Wuxian tugged at him. "Let's go." Lan Wangji rose to his feet without question. They were already on their way before he asked, "Where to?" "Fragrant Palace," Wei Wuxian replied. "The bronze mirror inside that palace is a secret entrance to a chamber. His wife accidentally uncovered some secret of his and got dragged inside, so she should still be in there. Qi Fengzun's head is in there too." Jingguan Yao would definitely lose no time strengthening the seal on Ni Mingju's head and moving it elsewhere. However, he could move ahead, but not his wife. Qin Su was the first lady of Golden Carp Tower and was very recently seen at the banquet. To have someone of such honorable status vanish so suddenly, people would surely have questions. He had to use this opportunity to barge in and take care of this in the fastest way possible, leaving Nimingju no time to fabricate lies and seal lips. The two moved with earth-shaking momentum, kicking aside anyone who blocked their path. The sect disciples Jin Guanyao had planted near Fragrant Palace were all trained to be exceptionally vigilant. If they sensed an intruder and were unable to stop them, they immediately cried out to sound the alarm and alert the master of the palace inside. But this backfired. The more they raised the alarm, the more disadvantageous the situation got for Jin Guanyao. Since countless cultivation sects and clans were gathered there today, while the disciples' cries did alert him to be on his guard, they also attracted dozens of people. The first to arrive was Jin Ling, with his sword ready in hand. He asked, puzzled, "Why are you two here?" While he asked this question, Lan Wangji had already ascended 3 of the jade stairs and drawn Bichen. Jin Ling was alarmed. "These are my little uncle's sleeping quarters. You guys got lost, right?" "No, wait, you barged in. What are you doing?" Everyone who had gathered at Golden Carp Tower, from the heads of various clans to individual cultivators, rushed over curiously. "What's going on? Why is there such a commotion here? It's the Fragrant Palace. Is it all right for us to be here? I heard the alarms blare just now." They were either unnerved or frowning in silence. No sound came from inside the sleeping palace. Wei Wuxian gave a casual knock. "Sect Leader Jin? Cultivation Chief Jin?" Jin Ling was furious. "What are you trying to do? You've dragged everyone here. These are my little uncle's sleeping quarters. Sleeping quarters, do you understand? Didn't I tell you not to?" Lan Qichen walked up the steps, and Lan Wangji regarded him. The two locked eyes. At first, Lan Qichen looked taken aback, then his expression instantly grew complicated, like he was still in disbelief. But he seemed to understand. Nimingju's head was inside the Fragrant Palace. Just then, a smiling voice addressed them. "What's going on? Could my hospitality have been so inadequate during the day that everyone had to come here to continue feasting into the night?" Jin Guanyao strolled out from behind the crowd. "Right on time, Lian Fengzun," Wei Wuxian said. "If you'd come out any later, we wouldn't have been able to see the thing inside the secret chamber of your Fragrance Palace, huh?" Jin Guanyao looked taken aback. "A secret chamber?" The crowd was doubtful, unsure what was happening. Jin Guanyao remained slightly confused. "What is it? Secret chambers aren't that strange, are they? As long as they possess some rare spiritual weapons, who doesn't have some sort of secret chamber to serve as vaults in their homes?" Lan Wangji was about to speak, but Lan Qichen beat him to it. "Ah Yao," he said, "might you open up the door for us and allow us to view this secret chamber?" Jin Guanyao seemed to find this request strange and was hesitant to grant it. It's called a secret chamber because the things stored in it are meant to be hidden. Asking me to open it so suddenly is..." He couldn't possibly have moved Qin Su elsewhere in such a short period of time without anyone noticing. A transportation talisman could only transport the caster, and based on Qin Su's current state, she definitely had neither the spiritual power to fuel it nor the desire to use it, which meant that she must still be inside, either alive or dead. Either way, her presence would prove fatal to Jin Guanyao. Though cornered, Jin Guanyao continued to calmly make excuses, but the more he declined, the firmer Lan Xichen's tone grew. "Open it." Jin Guanyao stared at him straight in the eyes, and then suddenly beamed. "If Ergaga says so, then I have no choice but to open it for everyone to see." He stood in front of the entrance, waved, and the doors to the sleeping palace swung open. Someone in the crowd suddenly said, his tone cold, "They say the Lan clan of Guzu holds propriety at the highest regard, but it seems that that's merely a rumor. Forcing his way into a master of the house's bedroom. Propriety indeed." Wei Wuxian had heard the Jin sect disciples respectfully greet this man earlier in the square, addressing him as Sect Leader Su. This was Su She, leader of the Su clan of Moling, which had been enjoying some fame in recent years. He was dressed in all white, thin-browed and thin-lipped. Although his features were clean and handsome, he exuded quite a bit of haughtiness. His appearance and bearing were fine, but unfortunately not quite fine enough to make him noteworthy. "Never mind," Jing Guanyao assured. "It's fine. It's not like there's anything unfit to be seen." He controlled his tone expertly, making himself sound even-tempered while adding just the right amount of uneasiness to his response. Jinling followed him, feeling indignant on behalf of his little uncle, who'd gotten his door kicked in out of the blue. He shot several death glares at Wei Wuxian. "You wanted to take a look at the secret chamber, right?" Jing Guanyao asked again. He placed his hand on the bronze mirror and drew a formless spell over its surface before entering. Wei Wuxian was right on his heels. He re-entered the secret chamber, seeing the spell-covered drape on the lattice and the iron table for butchering corpses. He even saw Qin Su. She stood beside the iron table, her back to them. Lan Xichen was stunned. "Why is Madame Jin here?" "We share everything we own," Jing Guanyao explained. "Ah Su often comes in here to look around." Wei Wuxian was shocked to see Qin Su. Jing Guanyao didn't move her or kill her? Is he not scared of what she might say? Not reassured, he moved next to Qin Su, carefully examining her profile. She was still alive and well. Although her expression was wooden, Wei Wuxian was certain that there was no evil spell cast upon her, nor any strange poisons affecting her. Her mind was clear. But the fact that she was conscious made the situation even stranger. He had seen with his own eyes how emotional Qin Su had become and how strongly she resisted Jing Guanyao. How had he managed, in such a short period of time, to come to an agreement with her that would make her seal her lips? Wei Wuxian had a bad feeling about this. Things weren't going as smoothly as he thought. He walked to the lattice shelf and lifted the drapes at once. There was no helmet behind the drapes, and definitely no head. There was only a dagger. This dagger emitted an eerie, frigid glint, roiling with murderous aura. Lan Xichen had been staring at those drapes too, unable to decide whether to lift the fabric for the longest time. Seeing they did not conceal anything that he dreaded discovering, he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. "What is that?" "This?" Jing Guanyao went to the shelf and turned the dagger over in his hand. A rare weapon indeed. This dagger was a weapon of an assassin. It has killed countless people and is incredibly sharp. Take a look at the blade. Look closely. You'll see the reflection is not your own, but sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes an elder. Each is a soul that has died at the assassin's hand. The blade is heavy with yin energy, so I added drapes to seal it off. Lan Xichen knitted his brows. "Could this be—" "Yes," Jing Guanyao replied easily. "This was Wen Rohan's." Jing Guanyao was clever indeed. Anticipating that his secret chamber might be discovered someday, he had stored a number of things in here besides Nimingju's head. Swords, talismans, fragments of ancient tablets, spiritual weapons. There was no shortage of rare items here, making the secret chamber look like an ordinary vault. As for the dagger, as he'd said, it was a rare item laden with yin energy. Plenty of cultivation clans enjoyed collecting rare weapons for sport. Not to mention the fact that he'd killed the leader of the Wen clan of Qishen, making this his trophy. It was all, in short, perfectly normal. Qin Su stood by Jing Guanyao's side, watching as he fiddled with the dagger. Suddenly, she snatched it from him. Her face started to twist and tremble. The others didn't understand her expression, but Wei Wuxian, who had just spied on her dispute with Jing Guanyao, could easily see the pain, anger, and humiliation written there. Jing Guanyao's smile froze. "Asu?" Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian both struck out to grab the dagger, but Qin Su dodged. The sharp glint of that dagger was already wholly buried in her belly. "Asu!" Jing Guanyao cried out in spite of himself. He rushed to embrace her limp body, while Lan Xichen immediately retrieved medicine to apply emergency aid. But the dagger was both extremely sharp and laden with resentment and yin energy. In the blink of an eye, Qin Su was dead. Everyone present was stunned, never having expected such a turn of events. Jin Guanyao mournfully cried his wife's name again and again, a hand cupping her face. His eyes were wide, and his tears fell like rain onto her cheeks. Lan Xichen said, "Ah Yao, Madame Yin, I'm so sorry." Jin Guanyao looked up. "Erga, what is going on? Why would Asu suddenly kill herself? And why would you all suddenly gather before Fragrant Palace to make me open the secret chamber? Is there something you're not telling me?" Jiancheng, who had arrived late to this impromptu gathering, said coldly, "Zewujun, please provide an explanation. We are all in the dark as well." The crowd all agreed, so Lan Xichen had no choice but to explain. A while ago, a number of juniors from our Lan clan passed by the Mo estate during a night hunt and were attacked by a disembodied left arm. The arm was heavy with resentment and had a significant murderous aura, so Wanji investigated, following the directions that it pointed. However, once enough dismembered pieces were collected, we discovered that the fierce corpse they belonged to was Daga. An uproar erupted both inside the treasure room and out. Jin Guanyao was utterly stunned. "Daga? Wasn't Daga buried? I saw it myself." Ni Huisong thought that he had misheard too. "Daga?" he asked incoherently. "Qixinga, you said it's my Daga? And your Daga too?" Lan Xichen nodded gravely. Ni Huisong's eyes rolled back, and he fell forward in a heap with a thud. The circle of people shouted in panic, Sect Leader Ni! Sect Leader Ni! Someone call a doctor!" Jin Guanyao's eyes were still brimming with tears, but reddening with anger too. He clenched his fists tightly and cried in grief and indignation. Dismemberment! Dismemberment! Who would dare do such a vile, mad thing? Lan Xichen shook his head. "I do not know. The clue stopped at the head." Jin Guanyao blinked. Then, realization suddenly dawned on him. "The clue stopped? So you came here to look?" Lan Xichen was silent. "When you wanted me to open the secret chamber earlier," Jin Guanyao asked with disbelief, "it was because you suspected that Daga's head was here with me?" Guilt now covered Lan Xichen's face. Jin Guanyao hung his head and hugged Jin Su's body. He continued after a while. "It's fine. We won't discuss it further. But Erga, how did Hung Wenju know about the secret chamber in my sleeping palace? And how did he decide that Daga's head was inside my secret chamber? Golden Carp Tower is heavily guarded. If I really did it, would Daga's head be so easily discovered?" Lan Xichen was actually stumped by this question. So was Wei Wuxian. Who could have imagined that Jin Guanyao wouldn't just move the head in such a short period of time, but also do or say something that drove Jin Su to kill herself in public to seal her lips? As the gears rapidly spun in Wei Wuxian's head, Jin Guanyao sighed. "Xian Yu, was it you who told my Erga and the others? What's the use of telling such an easily disproven lie?" One of the clan leaders was puzzled. "Lian Fenzun, who are you talking about?" "Who else?" another voice replied coldly. "The one standing right in front of Hung Wenjun." Everyone's eyes turned that way. The one who'd just spoken was Su She. "Those not in the Jin clan of Lanling might not know him," he said. "This man is Mo Xiang Yu, who was expelled from the Jin clan of Lanling for improper behavior, for harassing Lian Fengzun. Recently, there have been rumors that he somehow managed to charm Hung Wenjun. He's been following him everywhere, and the two of them have been roaming the land together. It's truly boggling to the mind why Hung Wenjun, who has always been known for his elegance and righteousness, would keep such a person by his side." Jin Ling looked incredibly upset by those words. Amidst the hushed whispers in the crowd, Jin Guanyao laid down Jin Su's body and slowly rose to his feet. He placed his hand on the hilt of Hen Sheng and took a threatening step towards Wei Wuxian. "I won't mention what is now in the past, but please tell me the truth. Do you have anything to do with Asu's inexplicable suicide?" When Jing Guanyao lied, he did so with aplomb, playing the part of the guiltless victim with perfection. Every person who heard him naturally concluded that Mo Xiang had slandered Liang Fengzun out of resentment, while simultaneously manipulating Madame Jin into take her own life. Even Wei Wuxian couldn't think of a counter-argument in the moment. What could he say? Tell everyone about how he had seen Nin Mingju's head and how he had infiltrated the secret chamber? Talk about the person Qin Su had met, even though the witness herself was now dead? Tell everyone about the strange letter that could be so easily written off as non-existent and fictional? He'd only dig himself deeper if he tried. As he rapidly racked his brain for a plan, Hen Cheng had already left its sheath. Lan Wangji stood in front of him, and Bichen blocked the strike. When the other cultivators saw this, they all drew their swords as well. 2 swords came flying at them from the side. Wei Wuxian had no weapon in hand to parry the attacks, but when he turned his head, Sui Bian just so happened to be lying there. He immediately grabbed it and drew the sword from its sheath. Jing Guanyao's eyes sharpened, and he cried, "Yiling Patriarch!" Suddenly, the whole of the Jin clan, including Jin Ling, pointed their swords at him. Wei Wuxian gazed at Jin Ling's confused face and then at Sui Bian's blade, dumbfounded to have his identity so suddenly exposed. Jing Guanyao continued, "I wasn't aware the Yiling Patriarch would return to the world. We are honored by your presence. Forgive me for not coming out to welcome you." Wei Wuxian was completely lost in the mists, having no earthly idea how he'd given himself away. Ni Huiseng was dazed too. "Sangha? What did you say just now? Is that not Mo Xiang? Jing Guanyao pointed Hen Cheng at Wei Wuxian. "Huiseng, Ling, both of you come here. Everyone, please be careful. He pulled out that sword, so he is undoubtedly the Yiling Patriarch, Wei Wuxian." Since Wei Wuxian's sword had an unspeakable name, people always used this sword or that sword when they referred to it. And when the name Yiling Patriarch was spoken, it was even more hair-raising than the revelation that Qi Fengzun had been dismembered. Even those who hadn't intended to draw their weapons now reflexively unsheathed their swords, surrounding this corner of the secret room. Wei Wuxian scanned the swords glimmering all around him, remaining unflustered. "So anyone who could pull out that sword is the Yiling Patriarch?" Ni Huiseng asked. "Sangha, Erga, Hongwen-jun, is there any kind of misunderstanding here?" "There's no misunderstanding," Jing Guanyao said. "He must be Wei Wuxian." "Wait!" Jinling suddenly called out. "Jiaoshu, wait, Juju, didn't you lash him with Zidian back in Mount Dafan? His soul wasn't whipped out, so he's definitely not possessed, right? So he must not be Wei Wuxian." Jiancheng looked incredibly upset, but he didn't speak. He had his hand pressed on the hilt of his sword, seeming to ponder what action to take next. "Mount Dafan?" Jing Guanyao said. "That's right. Ling, you just reminded me who else appeared on Mount Dafan. Wasn't he also the one who summoned Wen Ning?" Jinling's face turned ashen as he was not only denied the reassurance he wanted, but also realized that he had unwittingly provided further confirmation. "No one here knew this," Jing Guanyao continued. "But when Zhan Yu was still here at Golden Carp Tower, he saw one of the Yiling Patriarch's manuscripts. This manuscript was a dissertation on the peculiar black magic of sacrifice. It uses the soul and physical body as a price to summon malicious ghosts and evil spirits to seek vengeance on the caster's behalf. Sect leader Jiang can whip him 100 times with Zidian and nothing would come of it, because the caster willingly sacrifices their body. It cannot be considered possession." The explanation made perfect sense in every way. After Mo Xiang was chased out of Golden Carp Tower, resentment grew in his heart. He recalled the black magic that he had read about, and in his desire for vengeance, begged for a malicious ghost to descend upon him. In doing so, he summoned the Yiling Patriarch. Everything Wei Wuxian had done was to avenge Mo Xiang, which meant Ni Mingju's dismemberment must have been his handiwork too. In any event, before any alternative explanations proved true, the most likely story was that it was all the work of the dastardly Yiling Patriarch. However, some people remained skeptical. Since we can't verify that this sacrifice magic was used, you can't make such conclusions on your own judgment alone, Lian Fengzun. Jingguan Yao replied, Indeed, whether sacrifice was used or not can't be verified, but whether he is the Yiling Patriarch can. Ever since the Yiling Patriarch was crushed to pieces by the rebound of his malicious ghosts in the burial mounds, the Jing clan of Lanling kept his sword, and in no time at all the sword sealed itself. Wei Wuxian was taken aback. The sword sealed itself? A sense of foreboding sprouted in his mind. Jingguan Yao continued, I'm sure I don't need to explain what a sealed sword is. The sword has a spirit. That spirit refuses to allow anyone besides Wei Wuxian to wield it, and so it sealed itself. No one other than the Yiling Patriarch himself can draw it from its sheath. But this Mo Xiang, before your very eyes, just pulled out this sword that has been sealed for 13 years. He hadn't yet finished before there were over a dozen sword glares shooting uniformly at Wei Wuxian's direction. Lan Wangji blocked them all, and Bichen shocked away a number of men, clearing a path. Wangji! Lan Shichen exclaimed. The clan leaders, who were all knocked down by the shockwave of Bichen's frigid qi, cried out furiously, Hung Wanjun, you! Wei Wuxian wasted no words. He pushed himself up the window lattice with his right hand and weightlessly hopped out. The moment his foot touched the ground, he dashed off. As he ran, his mind was racing as fast as lightning. Jingguan Yao saw that strange paper effigy, and saw Sui Bian unsheath, so he must have guessed my identity right then. He immediately fabricated a slew of lies, talked Qin Su into suicide, and then purposefully cornered me in the lattice shelf where Sui Bian had been stored to tempt me to pull out the sword and expose my identity. Scary, scary, scary. I never expected he'd react so fast and could lie so smoothly. Just then, someone joined him. It was Lan Wangji, who had caught up without a word spoken. Wei Wuxian had always had an amazingly bad reputation, and this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. But his mindset this time around was not the same as it had been in his previous life, and he could face this quite unperturbed. Run first and fight back if the chance presents itself in the future. If it didn't happen, that was okay too. Sticking around was completely pointless, unless he wanted the opportunity to get beaten by several hundred swords. And crying out injustice was even more laughable. Everyone was convinced he would return one day for revenge and massacre the cultivation world in his madness. No one would listen to his explanation, not to mention Jingguan Yao was there fanning the flames. Lan Wangji was completely opposite of him, though. He didn't need to explain himself at all. In fact, people would do it for him, announcing that Hung Wenjun had been deceived by the Yiling Patriarch. Wei Wuxian called to him, Hung Wenjun, you don't have to follow me. Lan Wangji kept his eyes to the front and didn't answer him. They kept moving, leaving behind the cries rallying all present to strike to kill. Despite his preoccupation, Wei Wuxian pressed Lan Wangji once more. Are you really coming with me? You've thought this through? Once you leave this place, your reputation is done for. By now they had dashed down the steps of the Golden Carp Tower. Lan Wangji seized one of his wrists, looking like he had something to say, when a white shadow flashed before them. Jin Ling had blocked their way. When Wei Wuxian saw that it was Jin Ling, he sighed in relief. They were about to slip around him, but Jin Ling moved, once again blocking their way. You're Wei Ying. He was confused and unkempt, his eyes red, furious and hateful, hesitant and uneasy, sorrowful and at a loss. He barked again. Are you really Wei Ying? Wei Wuxian? Seeing him like this, the pain far outweighing the hatred in his voice, Wei Wuxian's heart trembled. But it would only be mere moments before his pursuers caught up. He had no time to mind the boy, but could only clench his teeth and circle around him for a third time. Unexpectedly, he felt a coldness in his belly. When he looked down, Jin Ling had already withdrawn the snow-white blade, now dyed red. He had never imagined Jin Ling would actually attack. The only thought on Wei Wuxian's mind was, of all the people he could take after, why did it have to be his uncle? He even chose the same spot to stab me in. Everything was a blur after that, and he only felt himself attacking at random. It was a chaotic mess, incredibly noisy with endless collisions and incessant explosive sounds of weapons and spiritual power clashing. An unknown amount of time passed, and then Wei Wuxian fuzzily opened his eyes. Lan Wangji was mounted on Bichen, while Wei Wuxian lay on Lan Wangji's back. Half of that snow-white cheek was splashed with blood. To be honest, the stomach injury wasn't all that painful. After all, it was just a hole in its body. He'd initially thought that he could just grit his teeth and endure it, but this body had probably never weathered an injury like this before. And the non-stop blood made him dizzy, and that, of course, was hardly anything he could control. "Lanzan," Wei Wuxian called out. Lan Wangji's breathing wasn't as steady as it normally was. It was slightly short, probably from overexerting himself in hand-to-hand combat while carrying Wei Wuxian on his back. However, the tone with which he answered him had the same steadiness he'd always possessed, and it was still that word. After that, he added, "I'm here." Hearing those two words, a feeling Wei Wuxian had never felt before spread into his heart. It was like an ache. His heart throbbed a little, but it was also a little warm. He still remembered back when they were in Jiangling. Lan Wangji had traveled thousands of kilometers to help him, but Wei Wuxian wasn't grateful at all. And he'd constantly clashed with him and made an awful unpleasantness between the two of them. But he really hadn't expected to turn out like this. When everyone was praising him out of fear, Lan Wangji rebuked him to his face. And when everyone spat and hated on him, Lan Wangji stood by his side. Wei Wuxian said all of a sudden, "Ah, I remember now." "What do you remember?" Lan Wangji asked. "I remember, Lanzan. Just like this. I've carried you on my back before." End of Book 2.